So in my research, looking at crowd platforms of all types, from software development, scientific problem solving, t-shirts, video production, what we have found out is that all of these platforms are demand constrained instead of supply constrained. What that means is that whatever problem we put on there gets solved immediately with ridiculous success rates, approaching 90% in many cases, well above how they might be done inside of a company. Yet, the issues these platforms face relate to scaling, being able to scale at a level that allows them to put more and more problems on the platforms. And the reason why they're demand constrained is that the internal organization that works with these platforms does not know how to work on a crowd basis. There's a lot of reluctance and a lot of worry about how the crowd will solve the problem. So if you go back to what happens inside of a company, a certain project is defined, a certain timeline is defined, certain objectives are defined, you hire people to work on those things, and then they go. The way the crowd model works is we say, let's define the project, but then immediately chunk it up into modules that individual workers can work on the crowd. So the first bottleneck tends to be is people don't know how to modularize a large scale project or even a small scale project. That skill doesn't exist in most organizations. Secondly, people get worried because we typically hire people to work on a task. Here, we don't hire people to work on a task. We assign a reward, and then people self-select and choose to work on the task itself. So managers often want certainty that you will get the best person. And we say, we don't care about the best person, we care about the best output.
We haven't seen that mass adoption yet, and it's mostly because of organizations having to come around to this way of doing business. What we have seen is that particular organizations that we work with, Lego, probably the best, coolest company in the world, Lenovo, have really adopted our model fast and have gotten real powerful benefit out of it. Because I can't have a linear solution to an exponential problem, and in our world, the exponential problem is that people don't sit around and stare at that thing anymore. So there's diffusion of channels, and you can't go to a linear traditional resource. It just doesn't support the media anymore. So that's the good news in our story. The bad news is there's this organizational complexity and this thing out there called fear.
So managers need assurance and a sense of understanding that the community-based mechanisms, the market-based mechanisms that crowds deploy can in fact produce the solutions that they want. And this is where the bottleneck shows up in terms of demand. Managers are not comfortable with these new models of innovation. They're different in the ways we organize ourselves inside the company. And so then there's a tremendous degree of reluctance to take the internal problems and rely on the crowd to solve them, even in the face of amazing performance gains.
That factoring in the cost of the number of submissions is just one piece of how you make the decision because of how many people that you want. I think there's, in all these examples, there is benefit to diversity, which is why the crowd approach is a very helpful one. But also, you don't necessarily, for some data science questions or for some creative projects or whatever it is, for some computer science challenges, you don't need as much diversity as for others, and so factoring in the cost, you want to make decisions about how many people do you really think you need, how long do you really think you need to run the contest for if you're using contests, that kind of thing. And
so the question about the crowd getting big and lots of submissions is a very interesting one, and we need to take the perspective of both the sponsor, the platform, and the participant. So for the sponsor, the more submissions, the better, because the likelihood of finding a great answer increases as more submissions come through. But then it raises the cost of evaluation. If your evaluation isn't going to be automated, then you'll have to sit through 1,000 submissions and filter them out and figure it out. For the platform, the question becomes, should that nth incremental submission, should that have been better spent, should that effort have been better spent on a different project than this one? So the platform is always thinking through, right, do I have the minimally efficient set of actors available to solve this problem and not waste anybody else's time? So that comes through. And then for a participant, there's interesting dynamics at play. So those that are highly competitive and want to win will always be hesitant to allow for more entry, for more people to come through, because then their odds of winning drop. But then we also know that people participate for learning, for the feedback, for the joy of problem solving, and we certainly don't want to curtail that. So there's no magic number per se, and what we say is that oftentimes you do want to allow for self-selection. You want to, if people are interested in trying to solve the problem and want to exert the effort, you certainly don't want to constrain it. But the design of the incentives, the design of the tasks need to take into account sort of platform concerns, sponsor concerns, and also the participant concerns.